Hey bro, what's up? Hope you're good. Right off the bat, the headline change that everyone's noticing is the addition of leaderboards, which is a surprisingly big deal for a game that leans into score runs and competitive speed. Putting leaderboards in means matches and high score runs now have a visible, trackable endpoint beyond just bragging rights in a Discord or a forum post. That shifts the meta. Players will start optimizing routes and tactics not only for survival, but for raw numerical output, and that usually brings out both creative strategies and the inevitable leaderboard-savvy exploits, where people squeeze an extra point or two out of quirky physics interactions. The leaderboards are likely tied to platform services, so you'll see rankings tied to your platform account, and that creates a little ecosystem of global comparison that changes how people approach daily runs and challenges. It also tends to push the community toward consistent short-form content, quick clips, highlight reels, and score breakdowns, because those are the things people share when a visible ranking is in play. Under the surface, a lot of the reported improvements target controls and input handling. That matters more than it sounds. When a patch fixes subtle controller lag or oddities in keyboard binding behavior, the whole game feels tighter. Players who felt some responsiveness issues should notice that aiming and movement feel more direct. That has a knock-on effect for the high skill play, because when input becomes more reliable, players can rely on consistent tricks and timings instead of compensating for variance. For streamers and content creators, that means cleaner footage and fewer "I swear I pressed it" moments, which improves audience perception of skill. The patch also bundles several crash fixes and general stability tweaks. Hotfixes like this are usually focused on immediate reliability, squashing the crashes that were showing up in certain scenarios, patching UI glitches that caused menus to lock up, and smoothing out odd interactions that could throw players out of a match. This kind of polish doesn't always make headlines, but it quietly makes gameplay sessions longer and less frustrating, and that retention bump is something the devs will like to see reflected in playtime metrics. There's also an emphasis on small but meaningful UX improvements. Whether it's clearer feedback when you hit matchmaking, slight menu layout tweaks, or fixes to achievements and progress tracking displays, those paper-cut fixes pile up into a much less twitchy experience. They may seem tiny, but when you add them together across dozens of sessions, they change the overall feel. Another angle to watch is matchmaking and server behavior. When leaderboards and competitive elements get added, server-side services sometimes require a little stabilization window. That can mean staggered rollouts across regions or platforms, so some players might see the new features a bit earlier than others. From the outside, it looks like the team shipped the hotfix broadly to PC and console, and the way they labeled it suggests the focus was immediate impact rather than introducing a whole new mode or feature suite. On a community level, updates like this spark a few predictable conversations. One faction will be hyped about leaderboards because it finally validates their hours grinding scores. Another will be hypercritical, looking for regressions or missing QOL tweaks. And a third will start fishing for exploits that can be repeated and shared. Devs often monitor these threads intensely right after a hotfix lands. If anything starts trending as a problem, it usually gets a hotfix of its own within a short window. Expect players to dissect weapon balances, spawn behavior, and map quirks now that there's a public scoreboard to push against. The controls fixes will be evaluated by the more technical players who can feel millisecond differences. They'll test edge cases and post side-by-side clips showing before and after differences in responsiveness. Gameplay-wise, the presence of leaderboards will encourage new kinds of content creation and social behavior. Speedrunners and competitive players will start mapping routes designed to maximize score rather than survive longer, and public lobbies may become more score-focused. That can change the culture of casual servers, where newcomers used to relax play might bump up against players chasing leaderboard points. It's a subtle social change, but notable. The introduction of a visible ranking system is rarely just a feature. It's a social lever. In terms of longevity, stability and control improvements increase the lifespan of a player's interest. Fewer crashes and tighter input means fewer abrupt session enders and more consistent practice, which in turn leads to tighter communities and perhaps more engagement in tournaments or community-run events. Technically, hotfixes like this tend to tweak both client and server components. Client changes address immediate UX and responsiveness, while server-side updates often enable new features like global leaderboards, track submission validation, and anti-cheat hooks. That means the visible client-side changes you notice are supported by invisible back-end work to validate scores and sync rankings across platforms. Those back-end pieces are what let leaderboards be meaningful rather than easy to spoof. So while the client gets the cosmetic update, the server-side scaffolding is the real unsung hero. All in all, this is a focused quality and competitive polish pass. It's not a huge expansion or a rework, but it's exactly the kind of update that reshapes day-to-day player behavior and nudges the community toward more competitive play while ironing out friction that used to get in the way.